I welcome you to the last chapter, chapter 15 of Class 10 NCERT Maths book. And it is about probability. It's a very, very interesting chapter. And later, when we go into the details of the concept, you will know that it's very important chapter also. But first of all, what we will do, we will go through all the concepts which this chapter has and then try to solve as many problems as possible given in the exercises and maybe also in the examples of the book. Okay, so let me just start about the probability basically. Just to give you some example of what probability is. One simplest example is a coin, which has two sides. One side is called head, another side is called tail. Okay, and then another example could be a dice. You might have played a dice game, some kind of dice game. So this is a dice. Okay, so basically what happens when we toss a coin? There are two possibilities which can happen. Either it can on top of after the tossing on the top of what you can see could be head, otherwise it could be tail. So basically there are two outcomes, and by outcome what I mean that what is possible to come. So outcome is only head and tails. So there are basically two outcomes. Okay. So then we say that what is the probability of getting head when we toss a coin? So probability of getting head is 1 and all the outcomes possible is 2, isn't it? So probability of getting head is 1 by 2. Another thing, it is just to clarify all the concept and nomenclatures and the way we represent it. You might have seen this one. Probability of H not happening. When we give a dash on top, then it means probability of not happening. It means we just minus it by 1. Why we minus it by 1? Because 1 signifies that when we toss a coin, either head or tail will certainly come. There is no other outcome possible, either head or tail, and that represents this 1, means something will come. And then by putting probability of H and then dash, we say that it is 1 minus 1 by 2. Again, that is 1 by 2. Let us also take example of a dice. Okay. So when we throw a dice, how many facets have dice? Dice has 6 facets. Okay. And then what is the probability of getting 2 when we throw a dice? We need to define what we are going to do. So we are throwing a dice, and then what is the probability of getting 2? So this 2 is just 1 out of these 6. So all the possible outcomes is 6, and then 2 is one of them. Okay. So probability of getting 2 is 1 by 6. Similarly, what is probability of getting an even number? If I ask, so let us just write down what kind of possibilities are. there. So basically, okay, let me write down here. We can get 1, we can get 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, isn't it? So total there are 6 outcomes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So if we say that, yeah, we want to know the probability of getting an even number. Okay. So what we will do, the total possibilities or outcomes could only be 6. Okay. We can get either 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, isn't it? Then what are the outcomes which are with the even number? This is even, this is even, and this is even. So there are 3 outcomes which gives us an even number. So probability of getting an even number when we throw a dice is either 3 by 6 or simplified 1 by 2. And then can you just give this answer? What is the probability of getting an odd number? Okay, so either we can do that, okay, it is 1 minus 1 by 2 or 1 by 2, or we can also say that, yeah, this is odd. Okay, let me just take another color. Odd, odd, and odd. So there are 1, 2, and 3 odds. So there are 3 odds, and total number of outcome is anyway 6. So again, probability of getting any odd number is 1 by 2, isn't it? So that is one basic concept. This probability is very, very important thing. It is a part of the whole statistics. You might have heard the name of branch of mathematics called statistics. The whole statistics is basically based on probability, concept of probability. One more concept which I would just like to take up is experimental probability versus theoretical probability. Okay, so in order to understand the difference between experimental and theoretical probability, let us again take an example of the tossing of the coin again. Okay, so here I have written that, okay, I have just done the experiment, means tossing of the coin is an experiment. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let us do it maybe one more. 10. Okay. So what we did here, we first of all tossed a coin and we got head. We again tossed a coin, but again got head. But we cannot deduce that the probability of getting head is 100%. So till now what we have done, we have done the experiment for 2 times, and then out of that we got head. So if we talk about experimental probability, then we got 100%. Okay, but the number of experiments which we did is very small. We just did it for 2 times. If we do it for sufficiently large number of times, means either 10, or 10 is also a small number, 100 or 1000, so what will happen, that the probability of getting head will be very, very close to 0.5 or 1 by 2, although it will never be equal to 0.5, but it will be very, very, and probability of getting tell will also approach towards 1 by 2. What does I mean by approach? Means it will never be perfect. So but somehow certain powers are working, invisible powers are working, which is compelling the probability of getting all the heads towards 1 by 2. And similarly, all the probability of getting all the tails towards 1 by 2. If, for example, and that is called theoretical probability. And what we got here, we just tossed it 2 times and then got 100% head, that is experimental probability. So one thing is that we need to do the experiment sufficient number of times, very large number of times, so that we get the correct theoretical probability. Okay, so for example, if we throw the or maybe toss a coin 1000 times, then what will be h? Typically, like, it won't be 500 divided by 1000, it will be maybe like 494 divided by 1000. So it will be very close to 1 by 2 or 0.5, but it will never be equal to 1 by 5, 1 by 2 or 0.5. But this is theoretical probability is very important, very important concept. Another important concept on which all the probability principles are based upon is whether the event is equally likely or not. So what is the meaning of equally likely? So again, I will just write it down here. The equally likely event is the event which is, yeah, as it says, is the probability of happening that event is same as other event. Again, we will take the example of tossing of a coin. So we know that the probability of getting head or probability of getting tail. So getting head is equally likely than or with probability of getting tail. So it's not that there are more chances of getting head than tail. Okay, it's always same. So this is what we call equally likely. If we go to little more complicated example of dice, and you also might have seen in some of the cases that sometimes what happens is that the dice of, for example, Ludo or some in some game, board game where you use dice, if it is not manufactured correctly, and maybe the in the plastic out of which the dice is made, it's not evenly distributed, or maybe bulging at one point, because there could be many different kind of deformities a die could the dice can have. Then what actually happens is that the probability of getting a particular number becomes little higher. So that is called maybe it's not correct dice, or maybe it's all events are not equally likely. But in order for the game to be more interesting and fair, basically we want to make a fair dice where probability of getting 1 will also be 1 by 6, here also 1 by 6, everything will be 1 by 6, because there are 6 possible outcomes, and all numbers, 5 is just 1 of 6, 3 is also 1 of 6, 2 is also 1 of 6 outcomes. So in a fair dice we have all equally likely events of getting any of the outcomes, and then it is called fair dice. Let us again take example of what values a probability can take. A probability of any event, again take the example of maybe throwing of a dice. So here all the probabilities are 1 by 6, isn't it? 1 by 6. So probability of any event can take the values. It could be equal to 0 also. It could be equal to bigger than 0. 1 by 6 is bigger than 0 or greater than 0. But it will always be either equal to 1 or less than 1. So the value of probability of anything could take the value between 0 and 1. It cannot be negative. So negative probability means nothing. Okay, so that is one concept which you should just keep in mind.